Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, we will have a chat on what's going on in the South China Sea. Now, it looks like every couple of weeks there's more tension going on in there between China and the Philippines, and I think a lot of that tension is coming from this resupply mission, which we are going to talk about later in this video. So China and the Philippines find themselves entangled in a complex geopolitical dance, particularly in the South China Sea. Now in the Philippines, this is known as the West Philippine Sea. I've got some notes here so I don't get lost. So there are some key points here that I would like to mention. So the first one, China claims nearly the entire South China Sea, disregarding competing claims from other Southeast Asian nations, including the Philippines. So this is a territorial dispute, not just between China and the Philippines, but to include Malaysia and Vietnam. The second key point, the region has witnessed repeated confrontations between Chinese and Philippine vessels, raising concerns about a broader conflict. The third key point is that Chinese actions include gray zone harassment, such as shining military grade lasers at the Philippine Coast Guard, firing water cannons, and ramming into Philippine ship near the Second Thomas Shoal. So that really is the source of this tension. There is this, I'd say, not really an island, but it's like a small kind of island, the Second Thomas Shoal, where the Philippines has stationed this really old, rusted Second World War era Navy transport ship. So, Philippines and China tensions have focused on Second Thomas Shoal, which sits about 200 kilometers, about 125 miles from the coast of the Philippine island of Palawan. So, it's pretty close to the Philippines. In the 1990s, the Philippines grounded an aging World War II era Navy transport ship on the shoal to help enforce its claim to the area. The ship is now mostly a rusted wreckage. You've probably seen that in the news. It looks like a really old rusted ship. And this ship is manned by Filipino Marines stationed on rotation. So every couple of weeks, these Marines need supplies to survive there. They need food and water. And every time the Philippines has sent their people, folks, military there to resupply this Marines, to this resupply mission, there's always this tension going on because there's a lot of harassment going on there. It's called the gray zone harassment. And that's to include, the shining of military grade laser at the Philippine Coast Guard, firing of the water cannons, and the last incident on this was pretty intense. You will see. I will try to, clip some pictures in this video. So that is, the Philippines claim this Second Thomas Shoal as a part of its, exclusive economic zone. So it's a part of territory. But meanwhile, China claims the shoal, which is in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. They claim that that is theirs, okay? That is their territory. And according to them, not only that, China claims to almost the entire South China Sea. And this is where China's claim is coming from. So according to the Philippines, this is a part of the West Philippine Sea. This is a part of our exclusive economic zone. Now, according to China, no, that's their territory. And in fact, they own pretty much the entire South China Sea. And that claim is coming from a couple of things. So the first one, according to China, that is historical water. So what does that mean? So there's the first one here. It says China asserts that its claim to the South China Sea can be traced back centuries. During the Han Dynasty, which is in the 2nd century, Chinese emperors dispatched explorers and officials to investigate other parts of Asia, including voyages through the South China Sea. The second thing is that during the Song Dynasty, China began naming and claiming territory in the islands chains it refers to as Nansha, which is the Spratlys Islands, and Zizia. I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly. Okay, the Zizia is the Paracel Islands. Now, another thing is that according to China, trade and exploration by Chinese navigators extended to maritime Southeast Asia, including regions like Indonesia, Borneo, and the Malay Peninsula. And last thing is that Beijing maintains that historical records demonstrate near total, I can say that properly, I'm gonna put it in the screen, near total control over these waters for century. So according to them, according to historical waters, that whole area is pretty much theirs. And they prove that by using this thing they call the 9-dash line. So China's claim is embodied by its so-called 9-dash line, which it features on its national map. So this is like a map that's completely different from the international map. This line encompasses most of the South China Sea. However, an international tribunal ruled in 2016 said that this map provided no legal basis for China's claims. Despite this ruling, Beijing continues to insist on the line's legitimacy. The 9-dash line has caused tensions with neighboring countries, including Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, which also claim waters near their coast. So again, this is territorial dispute. And if you're looking at that 9-dash line that's provided by China, that is featured on their national maps, they pretty much own the whole area. So the Philippines is like landlocked without being landlocked. Does that make sense? All right. So what is the Philippines' stance on this issue? Now, during the Duterte administration, this is the former president of the Philippines before this one. His stance on this was a little bit much different than the Marcos Jr.'s stand. So during his administration, he really tried to appease China. You know, he wants to work with China. And because of that, during his administration, he's canceled the U.S. Philippines military exercises because, again, he wants to appease China. But looks like his efforts didn't really, it didn't pay off, is that a word? Yes. He didn't get anything out of that trying to appease China. And now that we have a new president, this is the Marcos Jr., under his, administration, the Philippines under Marcos has deepened military ties with both the U.S. and Japan. As maritime run ends with China in the South China Sea, there's a lot of escalation going on in there. So basically, Marcos' stance on this is that he decided to deepen his, the country's relationship, the Philippines' relationship, back to its original allies, which is the U.S. and Japan. Recent clashes have occurred when Philippines attempt to resupply the forces on the ship have been met by Chinese Coast Guard ships firing water cannons at the Philippine resupply boats, resulting in injuries to Filipino sailors and damage to the vessel. So this was one of the last encounters where it was pretty intense. So a lot of I think if I'm not mistaken, about 4 to 6. I'm gonna have to put it in the screens. Filipino sailors have been injured, and of course, the little boat they have was damaged. I mean, it looks pretty sad when you look at the difference, because obviously China is a superpower, and then you have this little country that's trying to defend itself. It's pretty sad. So now, with all this going on, because of this tension escalating in that area, Biden had this the trilateral summit, and actually that just happened a couple days ago, Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, 4/11. And according to Biden, he said that any attack on Philippine aircrafts, vessel, or armed forces in the South China Sea would invoke our Mutual Defense Treaty. Now, the United States' commitments to the defense of Japan and the Philippines remain ironclad. That's according to Joe Biden. But this statement is not, I don't know if it's helping, because it's definitely making China upset. So again, there were two different stances here. During the Duterte administration, he tried to appease China by basically distancing, is it the word? Distancing himself, the Philippines, from the U.S., that alliance. So he's canceled the U.S.-Philippines military exercises, and he's visited China and, tried to appease China. But looks like that did not pay off, because really, there's really no what do you call this? There's really no working together. Whenever the Chinese government come out and talk about, oh, we gotta work together and, try to have a dialogue. Basically, the working together means you're gonna have to let us do whatever we want to do, and then you just stay silent. You don't do anything. That is the cooperation. But looks like Marcos has realized it's not going to work. So he's basically deepened this relationship back with its own the Philippines' original allies, which is the US and Japan. Now, as I mentioned, not all politicians and Filipinos share this the Marcos Jr. stance on this issue. The Marcos Jr. is the new president of the Philippines. Now, the trilateral summit has sparked protests in Manila, where demonstrators denounce the expanding U.S. presence in the Philippines. Now, there is this leftist group in the Philippines called Bayan, and according to them, the trilateral summit will lead to the installation of foreign military bases, and they're very much against to that. And also this summit which just happened last week between the US, Japan, and the Philippines, according to Bayan, this is that leftist group in the Philippines. This will intensify the foreign military buildup, and it will also lead to the escalation of conflict in the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea and in Asia Pacific. Now that's one group that's against this, against Marcos's stance on, how he's handling this, basically tension in South China Sea. Another person, this one is an acclaimed Filipino scholar. He also, if I'm not mistaken, he ran as a vice president. He was not a nominee, but he did run as a vice presidential candidate. I can't talk anymore. Last election, obviously lost. And he's also an activist. His name is Walden Bello. According to him, this trilateral summit resembles a council of war. He expressed his concerns on what he considers to be a provocative strategic containment of China. Now, if you look at all of this situation, what's going on in South China Sea, this is a very tricky situation for the Philippines, because at the end of the day, there are some people saying that, well, the Philippines shouldn't choose a side. We should remain to be in the middle. The problem is you really can't do that. At the end of the day, you're going to have to pick a side. Plain and simple. I mean, you can't just, what are you going to do? You're just going to allow China to just keep taking everything? Because if you look at, again, if you're familiar with, if you know what's going on in South China Sea, basically China has taken all the other islands. And not only they've taken those islands, they're doing explorations on those islands. They've built military bases on those islands. Now, this little strip of islands in that second, what is that? The second Thomas Shoal is one of the ones that's remaining, that's left. And so if those Filipino Marines left the, wreckage of a ship in there, they're just gonna take that, just like the other islands. So, I mean, they claim that it is theirs, and I don't think anyone would really stop them. I don't think anything would stop them from taking what they think belongs to them. That's what they think. They think it's theirs, so they're obviously they're gonna take it. That's just like what they've been doing to the other islands. They're exploring in those islands. They're building bases on those islands. I mean, you can see it. I'm gonna try to put some pictures in here. And yes, according to China, they claim that this pretty much the entirety of South China Sea belongs to them. So they're gonna take whatever they think belongs to them. So of course, those claims remain to be highly contested. But China has pretty much taken most of these islands. Again, there is this one little kind of strip of island that's left, and not very far from the Philippines. Again, about 125 miles. That's not that far if you think about it. Now, the Philippines being a small country, which is really a powerless country, trying to defend itself, it really cannot defend itself. So whether the Philippines like it or not, again, this is a very tricky situation, because whether the country likes it or not, it has to pick a side. And I think Duterte, the former administration, has tried to pick the other side during his administration, and that didn't really work. So he did that by distancing himself and the country, from the U.S. He canceled this military exercises and did not really talk to the U.S. as much. But that didn't really work. What China did, they just continued doing what they're doing. And I think Marcos was very much open to negotiation. He even suggested that China and the Philippines could do joint exploration, but there's no such thing as negotiation. According to China, that pretty much the whole place belongs to them. So they're going to do whatever they want. Basically, the negotiation, the joint cooperation means the Philippines will just have to allow them to do whatever they want to do, and then the Philippines should just not do anything. In fact, one reason why there's a lot of tension there is that a lot of Filipino fishermen are now not allowed to fish on those areas. So, I mean, this is impacting the livelihood of Filipinos. So, for the PH, for the Philippines, that original ally really is the US and Japan. At the end of the day, this is more than just the South China Sea. We're talking about the control in that region. In summary, the South China Sea remains to be a hotbed of tension. It will always remain that way for as long as there is this struggle. And we're talking about power struggles. And the Philippines is just one little country, you know. This is really between the superpowers. You know, there's that competing interest when it comes to strategic alliances, shaping the dynamics of the region. So this is really between China and the US. And, you know, there are these small countries who are kind of like in the middle. So there's a lot of competition when it comes to who will take control in that region, because obviously it's a very important region and that will shape the dynamics of that entire region. So that is the conversation for today. If you have anything you'd like to add, you can do that in my comment section below. Before I end this, I am concerned with what's going on in there, because obviously I have family there. I care for the country. At the end of the day, the Philippines will definitely be the one that will end up taking a lot of the risk, and we can only hope and pray that, you know, this thing does not escalate, because, you know, there's another story in there, which is Taiwan. Okay, we can talk about that in the next video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.